Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 44. It's finale episode recap time. I'm your host, Chris, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Jake. But we've got two very special guests here on the channel for the very first time, Alyssa and Rachel from the Survivor Scholars channel. Be sure to check them out if you like their takes in this episode. We do have a link to their channel on the description of this video as well. But Alyssa, I'll go to you first. How are you doing, and how are you feeling after this Survivor 44 season just concluded?
I feel like this season of Survivor was basically exactly what we expected. I called who one of the three winners was going to be, and I called it from the first episode, from that first match out. So I'm feeling pretty good about my Survivor takes this season, but I am kind of disappointed in who won. But it's life.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be disappointed. I did a poll prior to the finale episode last night, and I asked, who do you think or who do you want to win? And I think it was over 50% overwhelmingly wanted Carolyn to win this season. And we had like over 300 votes on the channel as well. So, Rachel, how are you feeling? Are you as down as Alyssa on the ending of the season? And does... if you're disappointed at the ending, does that sort of, now put a cloud over your whole Survivor 44 experience?
I think I voted in that poll on your channel, so I was one of the people that voted for Carolyn as who you want to win this season. I think going into the finale, definitely, like, my head was saying, okay, Jam Jam's probably winning, but my heart was saying, oh, it'd be cool if Carolyn did win this season. So I'm excited here to chat with y'all tonight. I don't think Carolyn losing and Jam Jam winning puts a cloud on the entire season. I think it is a good ending, even if you are a super big fan of Carolyn and wanted to see her win.
Yeah, so just for the live out there, you can see I do a vibe check with people before I bring them in. I made sure they're both Carolyn fans, so they're cool in our books, okay? Jake, how did you feel after the end of this season? I know that we try to stay as impartial as we can. I feel like you've done a better job at that. Like, I've been a Carolyn stan. I've been standing her the whole season, but I don't really know how you felt about this finale going into it. Who did you want to win? And, how did this sort of play out for you? Are you like high on the season at the end of this? Like Rachel said, does this, still make it a good season, or does the winner not being your favorite potentially sort of, make you look at the season differently?
I don't like sounding like a broken record because these two kind of share my thoughts. I really wanted Carolyn to win. My dad really wanted Carolyn to win. My girlfriend really wanted Carolyn to win. I mean, she was screaming. She was like, no, when all the Jam Jam votes were coming in. No, why are... And she was so upset that she didn't even get one vote. And yeah, I was...
That was the worst, actually. That really stung. Not her not getting one single vote. I felt like she deserved it. But I do wonder, and we'll talk about this towards the end, if it wasn't due to another player maybe having a really strong performance towards the end game, that people were scared, like in Winners at War, where they potentially would have voted for Michelle as a runner-up, but they didn't want to risk the winner, not the right winner, winning the game at the end. So maybe that also played in people's minds a little bit, and they didn't give Carolyn the vote in that case. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I want to say hello to a few people here in the live. We've got Chris back. I know Chris would be mourning. Big Carolyn stan as well. Dolores back in the live. Welcome, Dolores. Jay, how you doing, Jay? It's always good to have you back. Like you said, it's similar to what Bruce said. Let's go. I was so happy to see Bruce. I don't know who else were like I feel like we need an all-star season when it comes to 46 because the excitement level for me was through the roof when Bruce was on our screens. And I mean, we only had him on for like an episode, right, Jake?
If you're getting excited by Bruce, then I don't know. I would like to see a reaction to seeing somebody like Carolyn come back. That would be really funny.
Yeah, I think it's going to be epic. Christian, welcome back as well, saying, hey, TNT, Survivor 45, season of Pelican, Austin Taylor's. All right, yeah, the Pelican in the trailer. One of the things that stood out for me, and I know this is talking about next season, right, is that I saw the auction hammer being hit. Like, is the auction coming back potentially? Rachel, did you notice that? Are you a little bit excited about the potential of getting a Survivor auction back?
I saw a lot of people on the internet talking about, oh, the gavel means the auction's coming back. I think it would be fun to see the auction come back. Like Alyssa and I have talked about that so many times. Okay, have the auction back if they're afraid of people just waiting for an advantage at the end of the auction. Straight up say there's no advantages, it's just food. We love seeing people's food reactions, whether it's fun food or like really gross food that they're getting. That's the fun of the auction. Just say straight up, there is no advantage. Don't save the money. Let's see people fight over the food, and it would be a fun time. Although I feel like you have to be a little bit skeptical, and maybe Survivor editors are just tricking all of us and putting a random
Could be.
there, and it means nothing.
I like what you're doing, Rachel. You're saying keep your expectations low going into the season because if it's at the bottom, rock bottom, it can only go up from there if we do get the auction. I do think it's a podcast for another time. How do you fix the auction? I think it's something we could talk about. I've got a couple of ideas. I think some of the international shows are doing interesting things with the auction to keep people or players on their toes at least. But I want to get into this episode and talk a little bit about the finale. We had the final five here in the beginning. Coming into this episode, the power rankings that myself and Kahuna did, we had it listed in the following order. We had Lauren at number 5. We had Heidi at number 4. We had Yam Yam at number 3. We had Carolyn at number 2 and Carson clear out in front at number 1, which I feel like we were justified in those rankings, at least on Carson, because a lot of people spoke about how big of a threat he was in the game and the fact that he was running a lot of it. But the one thing I didn't see, Alyssa, and that really sort of caught me off guard was Lauren was apparently a lot bigger threat than what any of us realized, because everybody spoke about how after Carson, Lauren is one of the biggest threats to get out of the game. Were you as shocked by that as I was, or have you always been on to Lauren being a really big threat coming into this final 5?
I'm not sure that I was on to Lauren being like almost on par with Carson as a big threat, but I feel like pre-merge, at least, I was kind of like, okay, I'm waiting for Lauren to like get more steam. And I feel like for Lauren, I think you would be justified in maybe not seeing her as big of a threat because I think she wasn't edited super well, just because Jam Jam and Carolyn, and to a lesser extent Carson, are all such like big personalities. And I feel like Lauren's personality is kind of not low key, but she's definitely a little bit more flatline. Like she's not as big high highs and low lows as like Jam Jam or Carolyn. So I feel like she gets under edited in comparison with those two especially. And so it's hard to tell someone's threat level when you're not seeing as much of them as you're seeing of like other people. Like I think coming into this finale episode, I was also kind of prepared for Heidi to do well in Final Tribal Council, just because we've kind of seen this pattern of like the actual winner gets a little bit under edited and then people are kind of like, wait, what? They're the winner? So I guess I didn't see Lauren as super huge threat, but I also could see why you would put her low. So
I always like looking back at like the season after it's finished and looking at like soft interactions that we caught on camera, which sometimes goes over people's heads the first time they watch it, right? And one of the things that stood out for me, or that I was thinking about, was how quickly Lauren was able to go and work and have some strategic conversations with Danny after her right-hand person and Brandon was, or we thought it was her right-hand person, apparently it was Kane, but Brandon was voted out. And she seemed to be really good talking to different people. I think the biggest mistake on Lauren's behalf, or what she really didn't get right this season, Rachel, is just reading the room when it comes to both Carson and Yam Yam, because she thought she had a way with them in the game and they were voting together. But even after they didn't vote with them for 2 straight tribal councils, they still try to trust them, maybe a vote or so too long long in the game, and it could have been a different story. This could have been Lauren's season. How do you feel about Lauren now that the show is over? Do you feel like she had a great arc on the show? Do you feel fulfilled with the time that Lauren spent there? I mean, she was this single mother going out there doing it for the kids, wanting to be a great role model. How did you feel about Lauren, going out here in 5th place?
Yeah, I feel like I agree with Alyssa. Like with Lauren's edit, we didn't really see too much. I feel like of like, okay, the strategy of what she was doing out there. So her going out in 5th does make sense here because she's not making that final tribal council. I would say though, it would have been cool from like exit press we're hearing, like Lauren, Jamie really close, maybe more of that relationship and how they were navigating different votes as the last Ratu people standing. I can also see why the Tika 3 here would think that Lauren is such a big threat because she's got all of her Ratu people on the jury. That might be a little bit scary. Like, okay, she could have 3 votes secured because her 3 friendos are right there on the jury. So I think I would be a little bit scared to take someone like that to the end, just in case like her social game was that strong that those people would be automatic votes for her. And then, there's only 8 people on the jury if you have 3 secured votes. You only need 2 more in order to win it. So I can definitely see why people would be scared to take her to the final 4 and final 3.
Yeah, so Jake, we come into this new beach, which we've spoken about it many a times here. We're not the biggest fans of just moving them to a new beach for the sake of moving them to a new beach. It's like, what are we doing? But they get onto this new beach, and instead of there being a clue hidden or an advantage hidden in the final immunity or the second last immunity challenge of the season, they do go and hide an idol again because Heidi played her idol. How shocked were you that by the end of this was like maybe the one tool that could have saved Lauren in the game at the spot? No one seems to be able to find this immunity idol. Do you think that this is sort of because they've been given things on a platter this whole season? They just go to Shipwheel Island and they automatically get an idol, or they can see this big cage out there. Maybe they're just not as in tune with actually finding an idol out in the wild as they should be.
Yeah, I think that's they got too complacent with it's right there. No, but I just thought it was weird that they even showed us the idol when nobody even found it. I think they did this in 41 as well, where they show it on screen. It like lights up, boom, here's the idol, and people just walking past. Usually they do that, like, oh, this person missed it, but then this person walked by and they actually found it. And so nobody even found it. I just thought it was a bit waste of time, honestly. Nobody even found it. And they tried to like fool us, like they cut away with Lauren, like, oh, does she have it? Yam Yam and Carson are saying, I think she might have something. It was just to fill time. I thought it was, they could have put in more than that.
Jay here says that if Lauren found that idol, Carolyn and Carson likely flips on Yam at 5, and assuming Heidi wins the final 4 immunity, Heidi likely goes against Carson in the fire with immunity, wins the idol play, likability, Lauren wins. Yeah, it's possible. We don't know, or in that case, did Heidi then do enough to win the game? Who knows? Because then suddenly she's not going up against Yam at the end, who seemed to be such a great social player. But, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It sadly didn't work because they couldn't find the idol. Cashwash is saying Carson went from son to proud father, cheering for his Tika kids on the final tribal council. We'll talk about that for sure. And I do want to, say that, Heidi this episode really, really came to play. I think this is the first time that we've seen someone like come from nowhere, really, because she's sort of, for most of the season, we've seen her as someone that could either completely be blown out of the game, be voted out next, or could potentially win. So we had 3 categories in our power rankings. We had, Sole Survivor, Spy Shack, because they're hiding out somewhere. We don't know if they're going to go up or down. And then we had On the Edge, if we thought you had no shot. And Heidi was in the Spy Shack for me most of the season because I saw elements of brilliance. I saw elements of strategy throughout the season, which I really appreciated. And I always knew that she was a potential sleeper that could have a late run. But I did not expect, Alyssa, for Heidi to have the run that she had in this episode. She does end up winning this final immunity, which is going to come in clutch. And she does something that I don't know if a lot of us, like we're fans of the show. We all say, yes, you should always, if you think you're not going to win, you should take on the person in fire. But as a fan of the show, it's one thing to say it's sitting on your couch, but for Heidi to go out there and to actually make the big move, were you impressed by how Heidi played the end game here in this last episode?
I think I was impressed mostly because she said that she didn't know how good Carson was at fire. And I was like, I don't think I would have had the guts to challenge someone in fire if I had no idea how good they were. Because it's like, we as the audience know that Carson is not good at fire. Jam Jam and Carolyn both know that Carson is not good at fire, but Heidi was like, I have no idea how good Carson is at fire, but I still think I want to go up against him. So I feel like that was a thing for me that like impressed me, because I was like, this could either be a really stupid move or a really great move. And I think the fact that we were shown that Carson is like so bad at fire kind of like tilted that more towards this being a great move for Heidi, because we know that she's going to win against Carson in fire unless like God himself comes down to grant Carson fire making abilities. So I thought that was really cool. I was really impressed both with her immunity win and with her decision to like make the gutsy decision and kind of boost her resume at the last minute.
Yeah, because we saw throughout the season that she was practicing fire in her backyard, but Carson apparently practiced as well. And when you're out there on the island, conditions are a little bit different. It's a bit more humid. It's maybe not as easy as trying to, strike a flint in drier conditions. So it's not optimal. And one of the, I think, sweetest moments of the finale for me personally was, and I'm a bit of an emotional guy every now and again. I can be a little bit like Carolyn. I had maybe like a little bit of a tear or two going down when I saw Carson struggle. And Rachel, Yam Yam showed humanity. He was going out there and helping his competition. He could very well go up against Carson in the end. Is this a defining moment in Yam Yam's game where it kind of made sense? Like, I don't know how you felt about it. For me, it was like everybody told us how great his social game was, and we saw little bits of it. But this really showed that, he cared for Carson on that deeper level that is beyond the game. And I don't know if there is another player out there that would have done the same thing that Yam Yam did in that specific moment.
I agree. It was a really, really heartwarming moment. Like, even we heard Carson say, yeah, if I were in his shoes, I'm not sure if I would have done that thing. Like, it is such a cute moment and unselfish for Jam Jam to be helping his potential competition. They didn't know what Heidi was going to do. Heidi said he had tribal council. She didn't know what she was going to do. She was still deciding. So for someone in this game for $1 million to help someone else like that, it definitely shows how good of a bond Jam Jam and Carson have. And just like Jam Jam wanting to build that relationship, it's such a human moment.
I totally agree. I think that it really showed that he could have put himself at risk there, but he also had that confidence in his own ability that he could make that fire really quickly if he did need to go up against Carson. And I think that the whole thing, seeing Carson like freak out, get in his own head, Jake. You're someone that have said before, like you'd love to go and play Survivor, but sometimes there's that little voice in your head that says, can I actually do it? As this young kid to go out there. What was it like seeing Carson, like literally, he's played almost a flawless game. I think he probably, in hindsight, played, everybody in the jury said he played the best game. He probably played the best game that didn't win this season, but you could do everything right. And then you get that one moment that you need to step up. And then all that confidence that he built throughout this whole season just went away. And he went back to Carson from back home, not Survivor Carson that did so much. What was it like for you seeing that? And is there things that you can learn from it if you ever did get the call to go out there and play the game?
Yeah, I mean, it was like looking in a mirror, like... Yeah, I'm thinking, this definitely less extreme, but in these past finals that I had to take, I've had A's all semester. I've done super well on all the tests. I know that the finals are going to be very similar, and yet I'm like, I'm probably going to fail, aren't I? I'm probably gonna bomb this, and I'm gonna have to retake the class. And it's like, why? Why do I think that? I know I've done well. I know I've studied. I know this. And there's just a voice in your head sometimes. And you just have to block it out. And, unfortunately, Carson just couldn't do that, it seemed. It even seemed like while he was making the fire, it seemed like he was very hesitant. He was very like slow moving, whereas Heidi was like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's almost like he's like, maybe I don't even feel like I should win. So how can I win if I don't even think I should win? Um, it's just a very interesting, very real
You see, these are the
moment.
moments that I think make Survivor great. And, if we were to get these longer episodes in Survivor 45, I hope we get more of these human moments and that we don't get these extra minutes focused more on additional twists or fake idols because Jeff was so excited even towards the end of this episode. He continued to talk about the fake idols, like, Jamie, did you know you had a fake idol? He still wanted his moment, Alyssa. It bombed, but he wanted to make fake idols a thing of this season. What did you think about that?
I just think it felt like so unnecessary because I was like, why? What are you doing to poor Jamie? Are you making her feel like her whole thing was about the idol this season, and now you're just rubbing it in her face that it was a fake idol? Like, I feel like the joy of those moments is when they go to play the idol and then find out they're fake. And it's like, there's no stakes in finding out that your idol was fake. Like, days after you could have used it. And I think like the whole thing seemed to just be a setup because he wanted to like tell people in the future, like, oh, if you see this idol, it might still be a fake idol or it could be real. And I was kind of like, Jeffrey, why are we doing this? So it felt kind of inconsequential to me. I was not a big fan.
Did Jeff hint at Ghost Island 2 in that moment?
Feel like
maybe. I think he did. Did. That's what I was thinking when he was like, this is going to come back. He said this is going to come back. He didn't say this might come back. I think he just confirmed it.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm a fan of Ghost Island. I always have been. I don't care. Hate me.
I mean, with the extra time, I think it could definitely be better than how it was originally. Yeah,
I think it could work. I think these twists that have done, these worst twists that we've seen, like Edge for me is still a lot worse than what Ghost Island is. Like, I mean, if we're going to compare the two, let's just get Ghost Island back. I do want to read a few more comments here. Chris is saying, I didn't like Carson coaching Carolyn this whole season. They have looked down at her and thought she was capable of doing things herself. Carolyn didn't need his help. Don't baby her. The coaching moment that Carson gave Carolyn, I'm trying to remember it. Can one of you enlighten me? I feel like I forgot.
So I think we're all like, jumping
Jake, you go.
Okay. So when Danny asked Carolyn, wait, so why was it so important for you to vote me out? Carson was like, this is, you say this. I don't even know what he was trying to signify. He was like holding up the number 3. Like, I don't.
That's an okay hand. Like, you're doing great. Like,
okay.
This is what you're supposed to be saying.
Okay. Yeah. And then, her answer was apparently satisfactory for Carson because he was happy with it.
I must have, because I've been taking notes. I must have like looked down and written something down at the exact moment that happened. So I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now. So that would be annoying though, because one of the things while we're talking about Carolyn and her journey here on the show, she's loved by everybody. Like, everybody thinks Carolyn's the new star of Survivor. That's clear. I mean, she won the SIA money. She got the $100,000, which is well deserved. She came into the show being, herself, and played this emotional game. One of the storylines that they sort of tried to push, the narrative they tried to push on us this season, was that it's okay to be an emotional player and play the game. And even at the end, there was this whole thing about you can be an emotional player in this game and still win the game. But she didn't win the game, though. So, Rachel, can you be an emotional player in this game and win the game at the end? Or do you think that it's too much of a weakness? Why do you think Carolyn fell short here at the end?
Oh, such a loaded question. I feel like, yes, it would be possible to win the game and be an emotional player. With that, I feel like at Final Tribal Council, it seems like Carolyn's answers maybe weren't satisfactory for the people on the jury. If the jury members were different and were looking for different things, then maybe that kind of storyline would have resonated. And it seems like Carolyn feels sort of similar in her exit interview. She was talking about how she kept on bringing up like emotions and how she's an emotional player at Final Tribal, and realizing, oh, maybe the jury doesn't want to continue hearing this. I need to talk about other aspects of my game here. And so it is interesting her storyline, because with her big edits, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, she's going to be a 0 vote finalist. Usually the 0 vote finalists are edited in a more goaty way. Oh, they're not really playing the game, they're being brought to the end. So here it's sort of shocking that she's a 0 vote finalist, where a lot of us as viewers see her playing the game, being super strategic, being so lovable on camera, but then it seems like her cast members, yes, she said throughout the season, I'm being underestimated. They also underestimated her here at Final Tribal Council, and maybe not seeing her game. Maybe she wasn't explaining her game well enough at Final Tribal, or maybe they don't respect that kind of gameplay. But it would be interesting now, after the season has aired and the cast has seen the season, do people on the jury see like, oh, Carolyn was actually doing stuff. Maybe I could have voted for her. Or why did I not vote for her at Final Tribal after seeing all of this background information? But then I guess you could say, yeah, because Carolyn couldn't articulate that well enough, then she can't win the game because she couldn't get her story across.
And you see, you bring up a valid point there, because in my mind, I was thinking, why did Carolyn not get more votes? Why wasn't she more well received by the jury? And I think it does come down to her communication style, because, she is authentically herself, but we've seen a lot of the times that she gets a little bit in her own head. And, I think that she sometimes maybe can't verbalize what she did out there as well, or get it across in a way where it sounds really presentable. And maybe Yam Yam, funny enough, who had the same issues throughout the season, he was just a little bit better in the finale. But one of the things that stood out for me was when they went to vote, I know one of them said that Yam Yam explained, I think it was Franny, said Yam Yam just explained his story from beginning to end better. He just had a more coherent story on how he got to the end. Alyssa, how much of the finale do you think was cut out there for us? Because I didn't see this great story by Yam Yam. I didn't see him explain his game this clearly. I feel like we missed out quite a lot, because when I looked at all three of them there doing their final pitch, I thought it was very close between the three of them.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I actually kind of thought that Carolyn was the one who had that biggest through line of the story of I played with my emotions, and it turned out that was actually a good thing for me. I'm not really sure what Jam Jam's story was, other than just I'm a really social player, but I feel like a lot must have been cut out. I feel like there was also some stuff that Jam Jam said that he did that we didn't see during when it was actually happening. He was talking about how he had personal relationships with everyone on the jury, and I was like, we did not see most of that. Most of that we saw mostly his relationship with Carson and with Carolyn. And so it feels weird to be told later than that, oh, he had all these great relationships with everyone else. So I feel like we definitely lose a lot to the cutting room floor there. So
yeah, Sarah here says that Yam Yam said on his interview he wished they showed Jamie more because she was important to his story. So it's maybe one of those people that you mentioned there, Alyssa. Jake?
I was going to say, my take on why Jam Jam did so well is I think he was able to kind of steal Carolyn's story a bit, because they were very similar in their circumstance. They were together the entire game, and they were both kind of 1A and 1B to Carson. And I guess Jam Jam was just able to kind of step in as the Carson between the two of them and be like, yeah, it was me and Carson. Oh, and I guess Carolyn was there too. He would answer a lot of the questions that would be asked to Carson if he were at the Final Tribal Council, and was able to answer them, whereas Carolyn was kind of brushed to the side. It was almost like, they didn't really consider her as much in the first place. I think they kind of wrote her off, which is what it's funny, because I felt like the story was they were writing her off and then they weren't, but then they actually did. A bit weird. I feel like the edit towards the end of this season was a bit sloppy. I feel like the whole Carolyn coming out story of yeah, I'm actually a strong player and everybody sees it. They're even trying to take me out right now. They failed, so I'm going to become a 0 vote finalist naturally. It didn't really make sense.
I agree, and from a storytelling perspective as well, we even start this episode off with Yam Yam saying that I need a big move on my resume. I don't have that yet, but finding the idol, that's going to really help me because I can potentially play it. His biggest thing that he tried to do was take Carolyn out, which never really happened. He never really got that wish of his because Carson kept defending her. And I feel like, if Carson got to the end and Yam Yam sat next to him at the end, unless he did end up cutting him, he would have had difficulty in winning this game. So a lot of things, like we know Survivor is not all about skill. It is luck as well as skill, and things have to fall in place. I do feel like a lot of things fell in place for Yam Yam, but when the end, like you just said, when the end opportunity came for him to pitch his case on why they were underestimated, why that was a good thing because they could move between Ratu and Sokar and slowly but surely get into power, he did deliver. I think that his final tribal council performance from that point of view showed a great awareness, and he gave them the story. He gave the jury the story that they needed to hear to vote for someone to win this game. I want to read a couple more here of the comments. Let's see what people are saying. Jay says, yes, Sarah Jamie Kane too was done really dirty by the editors. Both of them were better social strategic players than was shown. I think that we all know, like, it's a 40-minute episode. It's very hard for them to give everybody airtime all the time. Like, someone, just by the fact that it's 40 minutes, someone is going to get shafted. And they also have to tell the story of the person who's going to win and the people around it. How do you all feel, and I'll start with you, Alyssa, how do you feel about the editing this season as a whole? Because I do feel like Survivor US have gone in a better direction than what it's done like maybe 3-4 seasons ago. Especially Erica's season was one that I was very upset about the end result of that. How do you feel about this season and the editing that was done this season?
I think it's a little bit difficult because, like, I obviously haven't had time to watch the entire season since yesterday, but I think the editing has definitely improved since like 41, 42. I feel like I was not as blindsided by Jam Jam's win as I felt with some of the other winners. But I also feel like, especially with Carolyn's edit, I'm kind of like, why did you give her such importance if like you're just going to undermine like everything that she did in the end anyway? And so I guess like there are some ways where I feel like Survivor has definitely improved on the editing, but then other ways where I feel like it's definitely not. I know, especially in pre-merge, I feel like the editing was weaker. I feel like it kind of came and went in waves in post-merge, where there were some episodes where I was like, wow, this was a really well-edited episode, and some episodes where I was like, what the heck? So I feel like we're generally on the upward trend, but there's still some like woobles that we could resolve.
I do think that with Carolyn, they just had a superstar on their hands. Like, how do you make Carolyn, how do you give her the classic 0 vote finalist edit? Like, I don't know if you can, because she's just the larger than life character. And the relationship between the three Tikas was quite unique this season. And I think from a storytelling perspective, if you look at, and this is how I felt coming into this finale week, Rachel, I felt anybody of Tika, like I wanted Carolyn to win, but I felt like we needed a Tika win for the season to feel satisfying, because this was really their season, and a season where they said alliances doesn't exist anymore. One alliance reigned supreme, and that was the Tika 3.
I agree. I think that's like the Tika 3 and their relationship and storyline from the entire season, I think is something that a lot of people are going to remember about this season. I think it will be interesting on a rewatch. Okay, from day one, can we see some of the spark of these three coming together? Because Carson originally maybe was going to go with Helen and Sarah on Tika. Imagine he didn't choose to go with Carolyn and Jam Jam on day 3 and instead chose to go with the younger crowd there, how different the season would have been. But I do think like it is so cool to see this human connection between these three. They're still hanging out after the show. They all love each other so much. And like that is something so cool to see, even if people are being cutthroat, even if people feel butthurt after the game ends, that they have formed such a strong connection together. And I agree, coming into the finale, we were saying, yeah, probably one of the three Tika are going to win. If Heidi somehow pulls out one big move going into the end and somehow wins it, it would feel sort of like a unsatisfying ending because Heidi's edit wasn't necessarily that good, and we've seen her sort of flubbing different aspects of the game coming into the finale. So I am like, it is really cool that she did throw herself into fire, but I am glad that her simply throwing herself into fire wasn't enough to win the game.
Yes, because this now is great for the future of Survivor, because I feel like, fire making has become such an important aspect of the final four that it kind of sets this. I feel like, it sets a bar for players to throw themselves in. Like last season, we had the whole thing with Gabler and Cassidy, right? And she didn't throw herself in, and everybody was like, you should have done it. And now Heidi has done it, and guess what, Joke? Still, Heidi didn't win. So going forward, hopefully people won't expect players to throw themselves in, because it's now proven that it's not going to basically give you the win every season.
It's one of the most unfair expectations you can have of somebody. I mean, oh my gosh, you have immunity. You have a guaranteed spot in the final three. And you're just like, yeah, you should just give that up and risk everything. So it's a very unfair expectation, and huge props to Heidi for being willing to do that. I mean, I can't imagine ever taking that necklace off. I mean, wow. But I think, at the same time, it's like kind of was her only option. I feel like she was aware, either way, even if she did win the fire making, I think she knew deep down, I probably don't have a very good chance against anyone here, but I might as well go balls to the wall. Got nothing to lose. So I hope, yes, that this is not the expectation, because then that would just make for a really weird, I guess, meta for the game of like, yeah, you have to. It's like a checklist. If that box isn't checked, you can't be the winner. So I'm glad it didn't work.
It becomes too end heavy. Like we're too focused on what happens right at the end instead of someone's whole game going into the final, which I think everyone should look at the whole game to say this person dominated 80% of the game, not the last 20% of it, by doing this fire making challenge. I don't want to say, like, I wonder if there is still like such a thing as runner-up money. Like, it used to be back in the day, you win $100,000 if you're second. I don't know if that still exists, but did she throw away $100,000 potentially by doing this? But you should never play for second. You should always play for first. In my mind, I think that Heidi really did everything she possibly could at the end game to really solidify herself as someone that Jeff would probably think about bringing back in a future season, because when he talks about playing Survivor Full Tilt Boogie, this is his version of Full Tilt Boogie, right, Alyssa? Is going balls to the wall, leaving nothing out there, trying to get into the final, trying to make the best possible moves to be able to win the game.
Yeah, I think that it's always interesting to see, like, I feel like Jeff's version of Full Tilt Boogie is very much leaning on, like, idols, really big flashy plays, putting yourself into fire instead of not putting yourself into fire. And I feel like, to borrow a word, the meta of Survivor actually doesn't benefit from that version of Full Tilt Boogie. And like, I agree that like you should never play for second place, but I also feel like you shouldn't play just for, how good it's going to look on TV. And so I feel like there's some part of me wonders, like, Heidi went back a lot to like, I want to show the people who are watching me that you can do things. And I'm like, how much of how you play Survivor is informed by the fact that that there are people watching you, that there are going to be people podcasting about you and talking about your experience and your choices. And so I do wonder, like, was Heidi aware of the fact that like she would get flack if she didn't put herself into fire? Was that part of the reason, beyond just like needing to, because she didn't have as strong of an end game as some of the other people? Was she also aware that like, if I don't do it, that's going to be a mark against me? So that's just where my thoughts are as far as Heidi and her fire.
Russell Muscle, welcome here in the live, saying I want to see everyone Full Tilt Boogie, like Bruce jumping Full Tilt Boogie into season 45. Like, isn't he like in his mid-40s? So I was kind of fearful he was going to like sprain something in his back doing that. So I don't know. Like we
He
don't want
gets
to get him
medically
injured on day one.
evacuated episode 1 again.
Oh
Injured.
God.
Don't put that
I
out there
think
in the universe.
I worry for him. He's gonna be so timid in challenges. I just know he's like not gonna go full out because he's just. I mean, can't blame him. He'd be so worried.
Yeah, well, hopefully he's a bit more careful going into this next one. It went out in a very bizarre way. I want to read a few more of the comments here. Jay says exit press isn't canon, but Carson did say that when he went back to Ponderosa, everyone said they would have voted for him. So 100% think Carson would have beaten Yam Yam at Final Tribal Council. That's some interesting insights there, Jay. I think it's possible. It sounded like they all were saying you were like, convince us that you weren't just playing Carson's game in the final. So I do feel like Carson did have a very dominant performance this season. And also, if we think about potential future seasons, if Carson comes back, his game might be quite underrated compared to like a Jesse or a Omar, because I feel like Jesse and Omar had much more of the mastermind edit than Carson. And a big thing that Carson did this season, I think, was the fact that he was like playing into that I'm this young kid that still needs to learn things. I'm not confident in myself. And people kind of wanted to take him under their wing when in reality, he's a silent assassin. So I do want to see him come back. Marcus here says an underrated thing that Yam Yam did at Tribal Council was make the jury laugh. He pretty much had them eating at the palm of his hand, shades of Tony Vlachos from Winners at War. Very true. How important is it to be out there and be this person that can make people laugh, that can lighten the mood in these tense situations? Rachel, do you think that this is something that he shares with other winners? Tony was brought up as someone, I know Fabio, towards the end, he was a bit of a jokester as well. How powerful can it be?
I think it can be super powerful. I feel like in Jam Jam's final tribal council speeches, you can see that kind of like personality shine through. And I feel like in his answers to questions, he does so well the like, okay, speaking serious, and then he does like a quick joke in there and then cut camera to the jury laughing. And like he plays it off so well. I feel like he can sort of diss someone and be like, yeah, you sort of sucked, or we had to vote you out because of XYZ. But then he spins it, and even though he's sort of knocking you down, makes it funny so you won't be offended by it because it was just a joke. He wasn't actually like being rude towards me. You won't get offended because he spun it into a positive, even if he was trying to say, like, yeah, I deserve to win because I did this better than them. He does it in such a like masterful way with a joke in there. So I do think like being personable like that, being able to crack quick jokes, especially when you're not eating and not sleeping, is such a powerful thing. Like, you'd want to keep that person around because they're fun to be around, they're chill, they make you laugh. In real life, you want to surround yourself with people that are fun and make you laugh rather than people that are like annoying or people that complain all the time. So I do think Jam Jam's energy and that personality probably helped him a lot with that social game.
Yeah,
I think that. Oh, sorry. I think that we got to remember you can't win Survivor if you are not liked by the jury. Let's think of who's probably the most unliked winner by the jury. I would say probably Brian from Thailand. The only reason he won is because he had somebody even more unlikable sitting next to him. So if you're not liked by the jury, you better hope you got somebody even less liked by the jury sitting next to you. And so just having the jury love you is already going to raise your probability of winning astronomically. And I think he was able to do that really well while simultaneously like explaining like, yeah, I was actually this like masterful social player, but then like joking about it as Rachel was saying, it was really good final tribal from him.
Yeah, agreed. I want to read a couple more of the comments here. They're coming in thick and fast. Apologies if we can't get to all of them tonight. We're doing our best. Gabe saying this season the winner was obviously going to be a Tika. 100% agree. Danica, welcome to the live. Always good to have you here as well. Jay saying Final Four fire making has become such a boogeyman. That's true. And says, imagine how Cassidy felt seeing the jury not value Heidi putting herself into fire for Carson, even when it was a record too. Yeah, we don't even talk about that record time. And, I can't imagine it feels good for Cassidy to know that someone else did what they wanted her to do, and still maybe she feels justified in a way, but it's probably still not a good feeling, right, Alyssa? Seeing something like this happen, and it's surely still going to be pretty raw for her because she was on the show not that long ago.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like, I wonder if there ever was a way for Cassidy to win. Like, people might say, like, oh, Cassidy, if you had put yourself into fire, you would have won. But, like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when juries say, like, I came into this open to voting for anyone, I'm kind of like, were you really though? And so I kind of feel like, did they just say that as a, like, kind of a diversion for the real reason why they didn't vote for Cassidy? And was that just kind of an easy thing to say rather than like dissecting something later in her game as a reason that they didn't want to vote for her? And kind of, I think that kind of speaks to, the way that the jurors this season are maybe looking deeper into the game than just like the last 4 moves of the game, where they are saying like, oh, this one impressive move isn't good enough for me. And so my like wish list for Survivor that I know is never going to happen is I would love to have like just Ponderosa style videos where every juror sits down and explains why they voted the way that they voted, because I want to know that. I want to like know people's real thoughts about why they were voting the way that they did, instead of kind of guessing based on stuff that they say in exit press. So
yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I did like how they tried to bring the jury in a little bit in this episode. It felt different to me with them kind of talking about the 3 finalists' games and how they got there, instead of the 3 finalists telling us why they think they should win. I kind of like that sort of reverse. I know they've done similar things in the past, but for some other reason, it stood out to me. Just want to acknowledge a super chat here from Zoe. Zoe, thank you, my friend. She sends it through, said, haven't watched the episode yet. Well, get out of here. No spoilers, but glad to catch the lives. Love you, buddy. Obviously the same. Love you too, Zoe. I'll see you in South Africa. So appreciate it so much. Let's read a few more here of the comments coming in. Dolores saying, I've not had a chance to listen to Jeff's podcast, but I've seen a bunch of other ones. I'm happy to say I saw Sia giving Carolyn the prize, which is really good. And I do miss the reunions, the actual reunions where we could see Sia giving the money, or we could see Yam Yam getting the $1 million check. I saw that Weiss and Brain Presents at one of their events, Jake. They actually had a mock-up check that they had Mike Gabler give to Yam Yam as the new winner, sort of passing the torch along. Why is it up to the players now, Jake, to do these kind of reunion shows and these live things, and the rest of us that are big fans, we don't get to see it? We just see photos afterwards.
It's just what us peasants have to deal with nowadays. Yeah, I think they realize
what I think needs to happen here, Jake, is since I'm not eligible, you've got to get on the show and then invite me to one of those events. Exactly. That's the only way I'm not going to be a peasant, is by you going out there and playing. You have to go suffer there for 26 days without food so I can get an invite to the Cool Kids Club.
I have to do everything in my power to get on Jeff's good side. I have to make analogies at Tribal Council. I have to make big moves and dig deep and make fake idols. And then I'll convince him. Or you could just ask Mike White, because apparently he follows everything.
Become friends with Mike White is what you're saying. I don't know what's more unlikely, you becoming friends with Mike White or doing all those other things to get onto the show. I feel like maybe getting on the show is easier.
Yeah, maybe. I think I'll go for that.
Yeah, I do think we need you there. But, in all seriousness, Alyssa, we don't get to see these reunions anymore. And I feel like as a fan, like we're really missing out. I know Jeff has said that potentially in the future, we're going to get both. We're going to get the immediate vote and see who wins with potentially a reunion show. So there's maybe hope, but how do you feel about the fact that we've got the players taking things into their own hands and they're doing their own after parties and getting the whole cast together to go and celebrate? Like, shame on Survivor, surely, because they've got the budget. The players now have to go on their own dime and fly to New York or to wherever these events are being held. surely we can call Survivor out a little bit for that.
Yeah, I feel like in general, there's a lot of reasons why I don't like the like at Fiji like reunion, and like the fact that we don't get to see old players like coming to celebrate new ones is one part of it. I also feel like it's really rude to have like the final three like barely get any time to process before they're then like shoved into like, tell me about your game. Like, I really don't like the current way that they're doing reunions, and I want it to go back to the old way. I don't even want like a mix of like, oh, we'll do the mini Fiji reunion and then also do a live reunion. Like just do the live reunion and let it be. So this is the one thing that gets me really heated, but I really don't like those at Fiji reunions.
It's a sad thing. It's like I've said it, I think, when I got really heated when we all spoke on Russell Muscle's channel a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I just feel like all the decisions they're making right now is cost related. It's not what's in the best interest for the show sometimes. It's just about how do we save a little bit more money, which is really not good. Dolores here gives you a little bit of advice, young Jake. So listen up. She says, Jake, if you get on, you need to get yourself some merchandise beforehand so you can start selling it like some of these other players did. So you got to make some extra money on the side.
Yeah, I need to just like Carson make a survivorjake.com and then have it shut down. Just like Carson did. Did you know he had it shut down like the first day that it happened? He wasn't even able to sell anything. I think it's still down at this point.
Do you think it's against the agreements or something? Maybe like they're not allowed to do anything like that. They seem to be a lot more strict in Survivor compared to some other shows out there.
I think what it was is that he basically just like slapped the logo on some and or just said like Survivor 44, and it was like, I don't think they're gonna like that.
He's a what, a rocket scientist, right?
Yeah.
You'd imagine he'd be able to put two and two together. It was quite funny to see Carolyn absolutely freak out at the end when she found out that he was like going to work with NASA, and she's like, "What?"
I didn't know. I just want
to say, Carolyn needs to. What Carolyn needs to do? Carolyn needs to open up a reaction channel. Like, I reckon if she had like a reaction channel on YouTube, she would go viral.
Do you follow her on TikTok?
I do follow her on TikTok, but I'll be honest, like I'm on and off TikTok very like quick. I'm on and then I'm off. I try not, because I'm afraid I'll get addicted to it. Like I always hear people just sitting there watching TikToks all the time, but I'll make sure, like I'm sure that TikToks are good. So I'll have to watch, I'll make sure like I favorite her or something so I can see more of her TikToks in the future.
Carolyn's reaction to winning the Sia money is so sweet. She is like freaking out. Her hands are constantly in her face. She thinks she's being pranked and like it's a deep fake on screen and not really Sia there. It's really good.
Hey, with all the AI stuff that are out there right now, I mean, you can never be too careful. But I had no doubt that Carolyn had the best shot to win this by the end of the season. I did want to talk a little bit about the two challenges. I guess, it's one of those things where I know Jake is not a big fan of the challenge parts of Survivor. He fast forwards sometimes through some of them. He's like,
call me out here.
Like, yeah, well, listen, I don't think it's a Jake issue. I think it's a Survivor issue right now, because one of the things for me is it seems really repetitive, these challenges, right? Rachel, do you think there's something we can do to, get something new out there? Were you excited to see some of these challenges towards the end? Or are you also starting to get a little bit burned out by the repetition of the same things that we're seeing over and over again?
Yeah, with the repetition, I agree with Christian's comment in the chat here. It's like, okay, final immunity. We're seeing some motion again. A few episodes ago, we saw the underwater breathing challenge one again. And for certain challenges, they're happening at the exact same spot that they had done in previous seasons. So if smart players, super fans are studying the show and people are, 3D printing puzzles, why don't you just memorize, okay, certain challenges always appear in XYZ spot. Final four might be some motion again, so maybe I practice a similar kind of game in my backyard, similar to knowing when certain twists are happening, like, oh, we think it's going to be an earn the merge with two teams. Final 10 might be two split tribal councils. people are going to start prepare and strategize around potentially certain challenges coming up, similar to certain advantages or certain twists continuously happening in the new era. So I feel like it's not good to have them in the exact same spot every single season, because then you have people practicing these things and you could say, oh, unfair advantage or not. I do like Samotion though, because it's a more like fair challenge. It's not as athletic. Anyone could win it. Like Heidi hasn't won anything, and here she won this final immunity challenge. But I feel like having it back to back to back like this, it's getting a little bit old.
Yeah, it's clearly, again, I think it has to do with the budget constraints, having things already built pre the season so they can just go back to these same spots, which again, if they ever do move away from Fiji, if they constantly have those things out there, a little bit word of advice, I'm sure there's Survivor fans that would love to go out there and do some of these challenges. So maybe turn it into a bit of a theme park, keep some of those challenges up there, and people would surely go there and pay to go visit where they've done some of these shows before. But when it comes to a show being appealing, I feel like I always compare it now to the challenge. The challenge has got certain things that they don't do better than Survivor that I would call them out on. But the one thing that they do really well is making the dailies interesting. Every single daily is different. They constantly try and innovate. There are certain eliminations that are the same. They're like staples, but I do think they're creating and innovating a little bit more. Let's read a few more of the comments here. Gabe saying, I want to see some of that Australian Survivor endurance torture devices out there. Now, I know that Rachel, you and Alyssa both watch a little bit of Australian Survivor as well. I'll go to you, Alyssa. I'll give you all the tough questions. I like putting you on the spot. So, do you feel like Australian Survivor is doing a couple of things there on the challenges that Survivor US can take note of, maybe, and sort of try and add to their own show?
Well, I feel like in general, the challenges on Australian Survivor are a lot, I don't want to say deadlier because they're not actually like deadly, but
some people have gotten some serious injuries on me. So
yeah, they're a lot more injury prone, and so I feel like when we have Bruce getting a concussion on like a Survivor US challenge, like maybe Americans just aren't built for the Australian type challenges. I do like some of Survivor Australia's. I do think that sometimes having the more physical challenges, having the more like cool challenges, for lack of a better word, like I think US Survivor could sprinkle those in, but like again, I feel like a lot of Americans are maybe not going to survive the Australian Survivor challenges if we can get concussions on regular challenges.
Do you think that it's maybe got to do, because by the way, I saw on Instagram, I saw a picture of Colby Donaldson doing a Spartan race, obstacle course race, and he's looking in shape, right? The original Challenge Beast, I know he didn't do so well in Heroes versus Villains, but, some of those old school players, they were really good at doing some of that physical stuff. I feel like back in the day, the challenges was a lot more difficult and it was a lot more physical compared to what we're seeing now. So I don't know if it's necessarily... And I'm like the non-American guy coming up for the Americans here. I don't know if the Americans can't do it. Like, I feel like it's just maybe the casting is just a lot different these days, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get not as many like conventionally athletic people.
Let me sort of elaborate on that.
That's the nice way to say it.
Yeah, when you look at Australian Survivor, they like half of the tribes are like previous sports athletes that they get to go play this, and Survivor US they get like everyday normal people going out there, so it's more relatable for everybody watching the show because you're like, oh, I could actually go out there and do this. I don't have to be a superstar that's actually athletically gifted to go and play the show. But I do like to come back to Gabe's original comment, I do like this endurance torture devices at the end because that's just down to who wants it more, which I always like to see that towards the end. Let's see a few more comments here before we start wrapping up. Danica is saying, why don't they have the endurance challenge as the final four? That's what we're thinking. Zudaman, welcome to the live, says, I agree, Survivor US has gotten extremely lazy. Yeah, it's sad. It saddens me to see it, to be honest. Sarah saying, I told my friend with a 3D printer she should just make Survivor puzzles to sell to people. Would buy them. What do you think? Of course, I wouldn't take any from Russell Muscle. I'd find new ones for her. I was just going to say Russell Muscle has some there as well. So definitely go check that out. What's Russell Muscle's website? Do any of you two know the website? Idleplays.com. Right, that's the one. Go check it out if you do want to practice like Carson before you go out there and and play a season. Okay, so I want to come back to all of you as we start wrapping up here the finale recap review. Who do you want? If you could nominate, let's get everybody to nominate one person from this season to represent and come back in an all-star season. And let's not make it Carolyn. She's the obvious one. She's an automatic. She's coming back to play the game again. If we had to nominate someone else, who do you think stood out? Who would you like to see for a second chance go out there and play the game again? Alyssa, we'll start with you and then go around Rachel and Jake.
Why do you always start with me?
You've got all the choices, though, Alyssa. I'm giving you, poor Jake at the end. He's going to have, if we pick really good players before him, he's not going to have anyone left.
Well, I'm going to pick the player that I think that you might pick and say, I would like to see Matthew come back and see what he can do when, yeah. So I want to see what Matthew can do without a bum shoulder and see what happens there.
Yeah, I think Matthew was an exciting player. And he did so much. He was good in confessionals beforehand. I'm actually surprised they didn't bring Matthew back with Bruce coming back this season. I'm surprised they didn't give him a shot as well, because I don't know what other theme he's going to sort of fit into in the future, but we don't do themes these days, so maybe he's okay. Rachel, who would you like to see come back?
Most merge, I would say Franny. I think it'd be interesting to see her come back. No man's with her as a solo lady going back into the game, because I think preseason we really liked her. She showed off a lot of smarts and intelligence, and now we see she can do challenges as well. So she's the triple threat coming in. So I would want to see her play again. And you won't have that showman's target on her back, so that would be good to see. Pre-merge, I'd say Claire. I think even though she didn't participate in any challenges, she can easily fix that for next time. Preseason, I thought she seemed really, really cool. So I would want to see her play again and show what she could do. If they do see themes again, maybe a pre-merge, post-merge kind of theme. Otherwise, I don't really see Claire being invited back at the moment.
I like that. I like specifically, I'm Claire. For me, I could take it or leave it with Claire. But the reason for me is because I can see why she didn't make it, but I do know that she feels gutted, and that if she did get another opportunity, she would do every single challenge. You just know that she probably feels really bad for the fact that she didn't step up to the plate. So yeah, I can see it. There's enough of a redemption arc there for her to come back as the person who sat out. But I feel like Jeff wouldn't want to. Jeff really has a problem with people who don't do challenges. So I don't know what that says about Sandra, because Sandra's been there so many times. But yeah, I felt like he was really hard on her early on in the season. So I don't know if he would want to see her back. Jake, coming over to you, who would you like to see come back and play again?
Literally, both of you stole my first and second picks. Matthew was my winner pick coming into this season, so I definitely wanted to see him come back. I think I'll go with Kane, because we've heard a lot in these press interviews about how much we didn't see with Kane. The jury was asked who played the best game, and this was before Carson was voted out. Who played the best game on the jury? I think all but one of them said Kane.
Wow.
And said that he was had really good relationships and was just really smart. He was able to, even though he voted for Brandon at the first tribal, he was able to salvage that really well. And Brandon ended up being, considering him one of his closest allies. Just a lot of praise for him. And I thought he was really funny on the season. It just seems like a really cool dude. So, I mean, if we can get him back and see some of this apparent social mastery that he has, I think that would be really fun.
Okay, so we've got Matthew, Franny, and Kane. I feel so bad because I thought one of you would have picked Carson. I really did. And I kind of want to pick Carson because I know he'll be very good if he comes back, but I'm not going to make it the obvious one. I'm going to go for Heidi. I'd like to see Heidi come back and play again. I think that she had, her end of her game, she showed how much she wanted to win it, and by her taking these risks, there's a story there as the person who, did it all and didn't win in the end. She went to fire. So would she play even more aggressive next time she comes back? Or would she look for another shield in Danny? I feel like she's going to play a lot more in front because she wouldn't want to leave it until the end where she needs to make all these moves because it didn't work for her the first time. And I did like Heidi. I was a supporter of Heidi this whole season. So, but yeah, there's actually quite a lot of good people. Like Laura's saying Jamie. I enjoyed Jamie as well. I did actually enjoy Jamie. And I enjoyed Lauren. So I could see it. So I made it very difficult on us all to say one person each. I'm sure that if anybody asked us in the beginning who would it have been, they wouldn't have thought it would be Heidi, Matthew, Franny, and Kane as the returnees, but it shows you how strong of a cast it has been this season overall. And yeah, Zuduman, thank you. You may be the only one that's agreeing with me, but I really enjoyed Heidi this season. I really enjoyed her. I thought she brought a lot, and just the passion she had for the show. I want to see that again. And my rule is I don't normally want to see winners back unless they're back on a winners at war or winners versus runner-ups or something like that, because I just don't want to see them wasted. But I can see how in 46 they'll bring some winners. But we'll have a full podcast in the off-season about casting who we would like to see on the 46 All-Stars season. So keep an eye on the channel over the coming weeks. We'll bring that out. Rachel and Alyssa, we do have our draft to do before we finish this live. You're welcome to sit in and do it. You're welcome to jump off if you want to jump off early. What would you guys want to do? Would you want to jump off? Or do you want to see what the draft, what we did this season?
We can see the draft.
Yeah, I want to see this draft.
All right, let's go for it.
I'm embarrassed. It's bad.
It's I tried to forget about it, and that's why I almost didn't.
Well, Chris, you'll see, but Chris at least had Jam.
Yeah, I did, but
yeah, in terms of
it wasn't enough. This is the first time ever that we actually had. Let me just quickly get the right screen up here. I don't normally work on one screen, so that's why I'm taking so long. Okay, so you guys can see that, right? Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we've got coming into the finale, we had those players still left in the game. So I had Yam Yam. Kahuna had 3 players. He had his first pick of the season, who was Carson. He had Carolyn, who was the second pick, and Heidi was his last pick. So he had 3 players left in the game. Jake was left with his last pick of the season, which was Lauren, and I had my first pick of the season in Yam Yam. And this is the first time ever in all of the seasons that we've covered. We've done 8 seasons, I believe, with this draft. This is the first time that a first draft pick won the show. So it shows you that we normally don't get it right, but for some other reason we got it right this time.
And you weren't even like trying to go for like the big game players. You were like, no. Oh, this guy seems entertaining, so I'll pick him.
I went for the personalities because I wanted to get the points for confessionals and things like that. But ultimately, I got some of it right, but I didn't realize that Kahuna was just going to kill us at the end game with having so many players left. But obviously, ultimately, we lose Lauren. We do lose Carson, leaving us with 3 players there. Kahuna's got 2 going into the final, and then I've got my 1 player there. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a second as I read the points here. So how it worked this season was that for each player, each confessional, they got 1 point this season. Team challenge wins gave them 5 points. Individual immunity wins gave them 8 points. Making the merge was 5 points. Successful advantage plays, which we only had 2 this season, was 10 points each. Finding an advantage was 5 points, which we had a big draw on that. Some of them technically I feel like shouldn't count for finding an advantage because they were given those advantages, but we still did put them down as finding an advantage. If they had votes against them, it was minus 0.5. The runner-up got 25 points and the winner got 50 points. We also had bonus points here for the end of the season. So 25 points for each one of these categories. We had most confessionals, which was won by Yam Yam for the season with 81 confessionals. Most individual immunity wins, which was a draw between Franny, Lauren, and Carson, which was 25 points each. Most advantages found, which Jake and Kahuna, you shared the points there, and there was a whole string of players that found the most advantages because they all just found 1. And then least votes casted against them was Carson by the end of the season with only 2 votes against them. And this was only for players from after the merge. Most advantages played correctly was Josh and Brandon. So whoever had them also got some points. So coming in at 3rd place overall here for the season was Jake at 322.5 points. Jake, your top player for the season was Brandon at 93 points, and he's been out for ages.
Yep.
Lauren got
I just want to, I picked Bruce. And starting off, I knew this was not off to a good start. It was just downhill from the very beginning.
And you had Matthew.
And I had Matthew, who was
so my
very first pick, and he, man, that gutted me when he decided to leave.
Yeah, so that was tough. So I mean, Brandon carried the team for you, and then like I said, Lauren second, and then Matthew was your third highest at 64. Even he was higher than some of the people that made, and you had Claire as well. So it's like it was tough. Then for second place overall, and it wasn't even close. For the first time ever, we have someone with the winner on this that are not winning the draft. And I had the winner with Yam Yam. He had overall the most points of anyone this season, which is right at 161.5 points. But he basically almost got half my points because I ended up on 341 points in total, which means that Kahuna is the new champion. And he had 112 points more than me at 454 points. He had Carson, which was the second highest point getter for the season at 139. Carolyn was third highest in the season with 98.5. And then Heidi sort of got 62. When you look at confessionals, she really didn't get as many as the others, but she did win that immunity towards the end. So that is the final points. I'll do one more screen share here of what the spreadsheet looks like so everybody can see. Entire screen. There we go. This is the final points here for the season. As I said, 341, 454, and 322 points. So moving forward into future seasons, I think one of the things we'd love to do, and we spoke a little bit about the Survivor Scholars about this coming into it, is we want to get some YouTubers going against each other as well. So we'll have our own draft here as well. But, Rachel and Alyssa, you got a little bit of a sneak peek of what the draft would look like if we did do one in the future. So you'll be able to strategize. I might change a little bit some of the weightings and what we give points for, but I'll explain that to you guys before we do it in the future. Overall, well done to Kahuna. Give him some congratulations. Kahuna's here in the live as well. We'll have Kahuna on the weekend to talk about the challenge, but Kahuna, will get you back on to give your final thoughts on the season when we do our 46 All-Stars draft as well. So well done to Kahuna. Came in from nowhere and just took it away from us here at the end of the season. All right, Alyssa, anything that you wanted to talk about, anything you wanted to bring up we didn't talk about, anything you want to promote while you're here that people can follow you on? And Rachel, I'll give you the same opportunity. You guys can do like a team, whoever wants to take it.
Rachel, you want to take it?
Yeah, I guess I'm so excited to chat with y'all. Always so much fun talking Survivor. Every week that I'm like, oh, sort of sad now. What are we going to do all summer with like the challenge Big Brother starting in August? It's going to be a boring June and July over here. But yeah, you all can find us here on YouTube. We are Survivor Scholars, and we are going to be talking our own little finale recap tomorrow.
Yeah, so make sure to check out the Survivor Scholars for their finale recap as well. Rachel and Alyssa, it's been so great having you both on here. We'll definitely make sure that this is not the last time. We'll get you back in, and maybe the draft for 45 might be when we do that. And Jake, any final thoughts from your end here on the season before we sign it off?
I think we
words of wisdom.
Everything.
We need words of wisdom from you. Yeah.
If you're going for words of wisdom from a 20-year-old, I don't know what you're doing. But
all you need to say is, if you're going to play Survivor, you need to play it Full Tilt Boogie, or at least if you go and apply to play Survivor, just let Jeff think you're going to play it Full Tilt Boogie, and you'll probably get the call back.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go put that in my audition video right now. Just Full Tilt Boogie. It's a 5-second clip. I'm going to play Full Tilt Boogie.
Yeah. Everybody here in the live, hey, thank you so much this whole season for being here, always taking part in the conversation. We love having you here. We love hearing all your questions and thoughts. We will be back, not next week. Next week, I will take an actual week off from doing any kind of recaps or reviews or lives, which is kind of strange because I've been doing this full stop, I feel like, for almost a year and a half now with there being no break, but we will have a week break. And then the week following that, just keep an eye on the channel. We'll put it out when we do our own fantasy draft for Survivor 46 of who we would like to see come back and play in an all-star season. Let's hope, let's make that trend so we can see 46 as an all-star season, because I think it's time. I feel like we've gone through enough newbie seasons now. We deserve an all-star season after all of that. But for now, we're signing off. Grab your torches, head back to camp. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.